Hello strategy gaming enthusiasts, my name is AlzaboHD. In today's challenge video, we're going to try to survive as a Celtic tribe in antiquity, and faced against raiders, Persian invaders, and Italian emperors trying to take us Rome, it will be anything but easy. Salve, and welcome to the world of Anno 117, a city building strategy game developed by Ubisoft, who are the sponsor of today's video. Pax Romana is the latest in a series of Anno games, and I'm coming from the future, where I've played Anno 2070. Unlike this solarpunk strategy game, Anno 117 is out now, and features improvements like a single-player campaign with multiple endings, diagonal buildings, and of course its setting in antiquity, which interests me particularly. Initially, my goal was to play the Roman campaign and build a hymtocracy, but after crafting a historically accurate Roman city, I realized we can pump up the spice. Let's increase the difficulty by waging war against the Empire as the Gauls, and see if we, unlike our historical ancestors, can craft an independent nation upon an island that doesn't become England. Before starting our campaign in 117 AD, it's worth noting you can play through a single-player campaign to learn the game with your choice of either Marcus or Marcia. This narrated tutorial guides you through the basics of the game and allows you to learn the ropes in the role of a Roman governor in Latium. And to be honest, I built a really cool Roman city and empire before pivoting my playthrough for more of a challenge. For today's video, we are going to embrace the Alzabo way of making things as punishing as possible by starting off as a Celtic tribe and standing against the might of Rome. We can choose our governor amongst a selection that includes Romans, Gingers, and retired Druids, and as a tribe we'll play as Asterix and customize his banner with Gaulish green. In terms of difficulty, we'll make things spicy with advanced mode, and while we can start off without an island and just a settler ship, we're going to start off on a starter island, as we'll be squaring off against the Romans, the Greeks, the Imperial Emperor, and Xerxes, who spitefully sailed all the way to Albion from Africa just to invade us in particular. The stage is now set, and while it is said that no man is an island, we will start our game as a Gaul on an island off the coast of Britain. We are far from Rome, and fortunately no roads lead to our new home. In fact, all we have is a boat, a primitive port, and of course Mother Nature, which we're about to plunder. The most important step before we get started is renaming our town to the renowned Gaulish village, and we'll need wood to start building the foundations of civilization. Woodcutters need to have trees, and should be spaced out sufficiently for 100% productivity. If you ask me, this is best done on the end of any island and away from our residential district, so we'll place a sawmill to process these trees for building materials, and carefully craft our paths to avoid losing lumber proficiency. That's looking good in the wood, so we'll finish it off with a warehouse for storage, and link this area with our port in a vaguely tribal design. During my original Roman campaign, I've realized saving space near the port for future fortifications is a good idea, so we'll leave it empty for now and road our way through the dirt towards our second priority, which is housing. At first, we only have hovels to house the waiters of our tribe, who are functionally the laborers and lowest hierarchy within any Celtic community. These workers will of course need roads to link them to their employment, and we'll pave a second path to guide them from the slums to their future career in logging. We don't have any residents because we haven't unpaused the game, but once we do, our hut hotels are open for business and thralls are moving in, and we'll need to feed them something as logs are inedible. Eels require swamp infrastructure, so we'll pick cockle pickers, an interesting name, which can be placed along the coast to feed our population. Romans eat sardines, and Celts eat cockles, which sounds unfortunate, but it is our best option for now. Shelling out for these clams provides enough food for our first waiters to appear in their housing, and before we obeliques, we also have a boat which we'll use to explore our island. This flagship is the most important unit in the early game, and we can queue commands for it to uncover the fog and hopefully find resources, and nearby land we can colonize later on. Britain is well known for its beautiful weather and lack of visibility, but now that we have 20 people, we can build markets and bard poetry to provide happiness for our cockle-mongering barefoot brethren. The smoke on the water cleared to reveal fire in the sky in the form of a Roman by the name of Tarragon Taurus, and as we do not have an army, we'll greet him with clams and get out of his swamp, for now. The ocean is a dangerous place in Anno 117, and is sometimes filled with Nubian warlords, so Asterix decided to be friendly while sailing home as quickly as possible. He had not expected to already uncover the island of Xerxes, known as Falcon's Bow Land, and he was terrified as this imperial power already had a standing army and fully fledged city. We didn't have a city. In fact, we barely had a village, and as our tribe of nudists needed clothing, it was time to make reed sandals and hemp tunics. Symmetry and placement are important, and as he had tribal OCD, Asterix ordered his peons to reposition the village to make room for early game industry. Now that the boys are back in town, it's high time we farm some Schedule 1 controlled shrubberies. Hemp is by far one of the strongest and most durable fibers of both today and the ancient world, and so our chieftain ordered the construction of 2 fields along with fiber spinners to finally bring our people clothing. Life is better with the basic needs fulfilled, but while we aren't bankrupt, we are about to be bankrupt, and our tribe is hemorrhaging fiat currency. Asterix was forced to gamble that this industry would bring his tribe prosperity and something to wear, but his barefoot boys still yearned for sandals, so he robbed them of everything and endeavored to reward them with work gathering reeds in the swamp. Villagers have no rights here, and thus our hero arbitrarily moved them willy-nilly to make way for fields of fiber. Hemp has many uses for society, and these coastal fields will one day be used for crafting the rope needed to build a navy. Unfortunately, that day was not today, and our druid hit the peace pipe too hard and forgot to develop the soggy mire industry needed to craft sandals. But now that the reed spoke Gaelic, our feet were finally covered. The biggest bottleneck in our tribe's production is surprisingly wooden logs, as while we have many trees in storage, we'll need more sawmills to produce actual building materials. More than 160 people now lived within our tribe. The economy was almost sustainable, and though it is perhaps generous, the game considered our motley crew to now be a minor city. Before we move forward in history, we'll use this time to rearrange our taverns to create an actual downtown, and use postcard mode to really appreciate the fact that people with shoes and tunics can walk to work and make our tribe dozens of denarii. For the first time in-game, we can upgrade our thralls to Tier 2, and unlike in Latium, we can decide to side with the Imperials or the Stormcloaks. Naturally, as a cheese-eating enthusiast, we will side with the tribal tomboys, who, in addition to having a second floor, upset our Roman rival as he can't hang with natural beauty. These upgraded citizens form a new class known as the Smiths, who are employed in cheese and beer production, among the more advanced professions. But before we attend to their new needs, it's time we return to the reeds and create a path to 2 new mud dryers, which we'll talk about in a minute. Every citizen we upgrade into a woman is one less waiter to work in the lumber yards, so Asterix set about incorporating the new district of Bogtown, which coincided with the advent of profitability for the first time in Gallic history. Reeds and dry mud can be refined in a laborer's yard to produce wattle and daub, which we'll need for more advanced buildings, so we'll place them nearby. The advent of faith meant we could now choose our religion, and we'll select the cult of Mars, as even though he's Hellenic, his worship displeases Tarragon, and actually improves relations with Xerxes. It's about time we explore more of the world of Albion, and Asterix sets sail for new lands and opportunities. Neferneru has a fully decked out capital and suspiciously burned down second island, and as we have not met the third Greek governor, meant that this was likely his colony, and that he was annihilated within the first week of our campaign. We also met a Roman that loves crates and barrels, but to make our own, we'd first need to create charcoal burners, which when combined with dried mud, are processed in tiling factories, which we'll place far away from our village on account of fire safety. With over 350 people, our village was now a major colonia, but out on the seas, Asterix met a baddie who mistakenly confused us for a Roman. We're on the same team, and yet she's attacking our trireme, which gave us no choice but to gift her a submarine. The needs of tribal industry necessitated the creation of the Ironforge district, where we will create ingots and weapons later on, but more importantly, we needed workers, and the adjacent valley provided us the perfect opportunity. Of course, the only thing better than underpaid interns is the fact that medicinal herbs were legal 2,000 years ago, and this district would come to be known as Hemp Valley. The advent of Tier 2 workers also meant we can now invest in technology, so we'll research everything available and yoink our dockside workers into their new neighborhood. More men means more cockles, and with a warehouse to store our hemp, tunics, sandals, and clams, we are ready to create the most important district for our polity. We don't go to the Cloud District very often because it's not created yet, but now that we have access to the Governor's Villa, we can create an exclusive area worthy of Asterix and the Gallic nobility. Debt is only a number, and mansions flanked by barracks are expensive, so we'll create the furnaces and blacksmiths needed to forge weapons to equip our future army and sell on the global market. Bordering Hemp Valley are more mountains which we will use to create iron mines, and the surrounding land is perfect for charcoal burners and industry. Celtic raiders had by now effectively blockaded our island, and the working conditions in Ironforge were rather grim, but weapons were being made, and we were being paid. Finally, we can afford a mansion and begin construction of the most exclusive area within our nation for the richest lords and ladies of Village Gaulois. Wooden walls are naturally required to keep out the riffraff and any potential Roman invasion, and the composition of town would be changed to accommodate a wide avenue from the port to the Cloud District. We are over 3,000 denarii in debt, which means we'll need to sell surplus on the global markets, so we'll offer tunics, wattle, and daub for trade, though our growing city meant the potential for fire and the ideal conditions for plague. Somehow, 800 tomboys and thralls constitutes a major imperial city, so we'll commemorate the occasion by completing the Cloud District, but the suffering and screams of those below made our chieftain realize disease had seeped into the city. Further abroad, Asterix encountered a Gallic brother from another mother by the name of Manx, and he wanted daub, which we had in high supply, in exchange for bailing us out of debt. Tribal lives are fortunately easy to replace, and our tomboy nobility needs cheese, so we will appease them with swamp ox farms to supply the demand. With obeliques loaded in wattle, we can sail to our Celtic clone, whose trade balanced our budget, allowing us to complete the fortification of our Cloud District and the provision of a defensive tower. We still need an army, and so we'll start with recruiting our first auxiliary, smile and say cheese to our first dairy factory, and redesign the historic core of our town to jam more peasants into our island, as recruiting soldiers had caused a shortage of workers. The southern side of the state was still empty, so the new district of South Shore was purpose-built to staff the armories and barracks of our growing army, who had by now assembled outside of the royal villa. Unfortunately, this was cause for the Roman emperor to make his appearance, but we don't talk to Romans, and thus denied his request to enter our island. Compared to our rivals, the Gallic army was weak and powerless, so we'll recruit archers and hire police to oppress those that claim to be conscientious objectors. More cheese means more money, rope weavers and sailcrafters means we can craft a navy, and Asterix moved his cocklemongers to Bogtown to make room for a shipyard and supply depot. One more auxiliary will bring our military to parity, and our Roman neighbor gave us 10,000 denarii in an attempt to protect himself from the consequences of his actions. The smell of war is in the air, and with the shipyard completed and the South Shore dying from dysentery, a special militarist operation would be the perfect distraction to improve morale. It's time to bring out your dead, and Hemp Valley is on fire, but more importantly, Asterix designed the Tutatis class warship. This new boat meant our navy could ferry our armies, so we'll hire some sailors and give the fleet a hand with a repair crane just in case. Tarragon's island lay vulnerable to invasion across the bay, and Asterix decreed the construction of Celtic idols so that once Tutatis multiplied our navy, it was time to load up and lock out to finally kick the Imperials out of Albion. This oppressively colonial Roman town would soon taste Celtic steel, and our fleet loaded with infantry and archers set out to free the land that lay across the bay. Xerxes seemed eager to watch from his flagship that shadowed our navy, and in 118 AD, Asterix declared an all-out war on Tarragon, who vowed to embrace his inner child soldier. Everything we do pleases Xerxes, and with war on the horizon, he wanted to be friends with our chieftain. Asterix had little time for wine and cheese, and sailed towards the Roman governor's harbor, while Tarragon desperately hired soldiers in the only armory on his island. Our first priority will be to burn down the port to prevent any Italian from leaving this land, and disembarking our military resulted in an easy victory. Next, we'll sail to his capital Manor, which he placed foolishly along the coast, but two imperial legions lay between our boats and the city center. Let's give them a warm welcome and bombard their houses with fire arrows, disembark our defensive forces, and prepare for battle. Tarragone has less men and no archers, but his legions are more powerful than our auxiliaries, making this a fight between quantity versus quality. Let's hope friendly fire doesn't exist for the sake of our soldiers, and while some of you may die, that's a price Asterix is willing to pay. It didn't take long for our warband to strike fear into the Italian foe, and half of the Roman legion bravely ran away, but the fight was still on, and one of our own units was almost terra gone. The enemy general's 2nd Legion ran to defend the capital palace, which bombarded our boys, forcing our chieftain to withdraw a unit into the fleet to avoid the same fate. The only thing left to do was to greet the governor with the gift of friendly fire, which was poorly received, and will make this villa an open concept by taking down the walls. We could end the war here, but arson is fun, and the Emperor of Rome demanded us to stop heating the floors under threat of war. That's a negatory from me, and the Emperor is all words anyways, as he only wrote a strongly worded letter labeling us a troublemaker. Back at home, everyone was dying of Bach fever, so it's time for bread and circuses with our very first religious festival, celebrating the god of war and our own upcoming victory. The Roman aggressor rebuilt his port, forcing us to tear it down a second time, and the only goal remaining would be to burn down the library, as warriors don't read books. Capturing cities in Anno 117 requires the occupation of the villa ruins, which would have been nice to know before destroying literally everything not bolted down. Romans are cowards, and naturally the governor committed Sudoku rather than work in our swamp as a volunteer, and Asterix had several options here regarding the future of the island. Annexation requires fiat currency or imperial reputation. Vassalization implies indirect control, but burning everything is free. As the richest polity in Albion, we'll pay the troll toll and keep the island for ourselves, and rename it Liberty in honor of all the people we've freed from Italian tyranny. Asterix now controls both islands across the bay, and our hero sailed home, where a festival for the god of war was being held in honor of our victory. The 100 surviving soldiers of our tribal brigade were welcomed home as heroes and made their way to the Cloud District for their payment in cheese and eventual demobilization to rejoin the working population. Asterix and his people had campaigned for over a year, and in 118 AD, it's time to cover an overview of his domain in the larger world of Albion. The last of the Roman governors was gone, and the strongest power now lay in the hands of our fellow Celtic raider, Voada of Liscatash. Her forces are 8 times larger than those of our own, and her capital of Carrigmore is a huge tract of defensible land. Nefanaru, aka African Xerxes, has 3 times our army, 4 times our navy, and has 5 islands that completely surround us. He may or may not have slaughtered the only other AI governor before we even met them, and his capital island of Falcon Bow Land is urban and Romanized, though his combined economy is barely greater than that of our own. The Roman Emperor hates that we defended ourselves from colonial imperialism, but the SPQR is far away in Italia, and his threatening hand gestures mean little to Asterix and Albion. Within our capital city, our Celtic hero rules from his villa in the Cloud District, which, in addition to housing the upper class of tribal tomboy smiths, provides a fantastic view over the Gallic nation. The 6 districts of our state consist of the Old Town Core, which hosts primarily soldiers, sailors, and the Civic Guard. To the east lies Bogtown, which burned down, though normally this is where our lumberjacks, cocklemongers, and eel grabbers live and thrive. To our west are the marshes, which is an absolutely miserable place, with careers in ox wrangling for cheese and dying to disease. Following the primary road westwards is Ironforge, which produces ore, ingots, and weapons for our defensive forces. Our next district is Hemp Valley, which is the most rural area of Village Gaulois, and largely produces our fabrics and clothing, and is separated from the Cloud District by a gigantic wall to keep the serfs on their turf. The final district is South Shore, and primarily serves to solve the worker shortage, though its proximity to the swamp renders it disease-prone with plagues for days. Our island nation is absolutely loaded with a profit of nearly 1,000 denarii and 1,600 residents, though there's also 100 imperials under our rule in the neighboring land of Liberty. Ironically, this conquered and burned down town is quite happy to grovel in ruin, and has far higher happiness and healthiness than our own city, which our subjects hate and frequently protest in a proto-French manner. The Village Gaulois is the premier exporter of weapons, cockles, and iron in the known world, which makes us obscenely wealthy. Perhaps with these riches and newly liberated subjects, Asterix will have the power to sail east and free Italy once and for all, but that day is not today. Before ending the video, I'd like to thank Ubisoft and Anno 117 for sponsoring today's video, and be sure to support the channel by buying the game with the link shown on screen and in the description box below. Anno 117 is out now and is cross-platform compatible so that you can play with your friends on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox in cooperative or competitive modes. Both the campaign and free play allow multiple players, and you can watch streams on Anno 117 on Twitch between now and November 24th to unlock an exclusive ship skin and contour unit skins. Let me know how often you think of the Roman Empire, and if you want to see a Roman campaign, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to support AlzaboHD for free. Vale and safe travels Rome. It's time now for the credits.